In February of 2023, the family of actor Bruce Willis revealed that he has a form of cognitive impairment called fronto-temporal dementia. While not the same condition as Alzheimer's disease proper, the sad announcement provoked a flurry of increased traffic to the Alzheimer's Association's website. In other words, the disclosures started a renewed conversation about aging and its attendant illnesses. For me, this is not simply an academic matter. My dad, Jim, died from Alzheimer's disease in 2016 after a decade-long struggle with that dreaded condition. Going through the experiences of trying to care for him and later getting him situated in and visiting him in a nursing home, I often felt that we were alone. Of course, and unfortunately, that is far from the case. But frequently, it's not exactly public knowledge that a person has Alzheimer's disease or some other form of dementia. One reason is the pretty straightforward consideration that families of all sorts usually wish to maintain their privacy in such matters. Another is that Alzheimer's is an insidious ailment whose presence may not be obvious until it is fairly advanced. Finally, we don't all have celebrity status. But for those who, enviably or not, have achieved some measure of fame, things may be quite different. So in this video, I will run through some of the stars of the stage or screen who are known to have had, or currently have, the misfortune of an Alzheimer's diagnosis, and the ensuing cognitive decline and debilitation that comes with it. First, a few caveats. I do not mean for this presentation to be lurid or sensational. On the contrary, one chief purpose is to remind viewers that dementia is no respecter of persons, as it were. As far as we know, and notwithstanding various hypothesized predispositions and risk factors, Alzheimer's disease can strike almost anyone. So, for those who are dealing with this terrible affliction, let this serve as a tragic reminder that you are not alone. And yes, a further purpose is more practical and personal. I'm trying to get back into the swing of making videos for this channel, and along those lines I have plenty more practical content planned, so stay tuned. Number 10. Joanne Woodward. At 93 years of age as of this writing, Joanne Woodward is the only entrant on this list to be alive at the time of this recording. Getting her start in television in the 1950s, she broke into a major movie role in the 1956 crime drama A Kiss Before Dying with Robert Wagner. Indisputably, her breakout performance came the following year in the psychological drama The Three Faces of Eve, for which she won the Academy Award for Best Actress in 1958. She would be nominated for further recognition for the 1968 drama Rachel, Rachel, directed by her longtime collaborator and late husband, Paul Newman. Woodward's critical acclaim extended into the 1970s, where she performed in Gilbert Cate's 1973 Summer Wishes, Winter Dreams. As the decade progressed, she transitioned back into TV, where, among other accolades, she won an Emmy Award for the 1978 production See How She Runs. Sadly, in an article that appeared in the Los Angeles Times in 2022, we read, "Diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease in 2007, Woodward has retreated from public life." Number 9. Robert Loggia. Born Salvatore Loggia on January 3, 1930, he studied journalism in college. But the man who would become known as Robert Loggia rose to fame primarily playing tough guy roles. For example, he played the lead in Walt Disney Presents' 1958 television series, The 9 Lives of Alfego Baca. Loggia's face seemed ever present, especially during the 1980s, where he made notable appearances in several widely distributed films, including 1982's An Officer and a Gentleman with Richard Gere. The following year, he starred alongside Anthony Perkins in Universal Pictures' sequel to Alfred Hitchcock's groundbreaking 1960 horror film, Psycho. But frequently, Loggia was cast to play mobster-type characters. He was a Miami-based cocaine smuggler and drug lord in Brian De Palma's 1983 Scarface, which also featured Al Pacino. Or again, he was cast as sleazebag smut producer Mr. Eddie, or Dick Laurent, in David Lynch's 1997 abstract psychological thriller Lost Highway. Occasionally, these secondary parts garnered him critical acclaim. For instance, Loggia was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for his portrayal of private investigator Sam Ransom in the 1985 crime mystery Jagged Edge. And he won a Saturn Award in 1990 for his role as toy company owner in the 1988 dramedy Big, starring Tom Hanks. Robert Loggia was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease in 2010. He passed away from its complications on the 4th of December 2015 at the age of 85 at his home in Brentwood, Los Angeles. Number 8. Burgess Meredith. Born in Cleveland, Ohio in 1907, Oliver Burgess Meredith began his acting career in the 1930s on Broadway. His early cinematic work includes, with Lon Chaney Jr., a 1939 adaptation of John Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men, and with Robert Mitchum, a starring role in 1945's The Story of G.I. Joe. Meredith was lauded for his acting in John Schlesinger's 1975 historical satire, The Day of the Locust. He was also well known to popular audiences for his work on television. During the 1960s, Meredith made a handful of appearances on Rod Serling's The Twilight Zone, and as the villain, the Penguin, on Batman, alongside Adam West and Burt Ward. During the late 1970s and early 1980s, Meredith was a fixture in Sylvester Stallone's blockbuster Rocky franchise, where he portrayed the gravelly-voiced trainer, Mickey Goldmill. After over 50 years of memorably quirky performances, in 1997, Meredith passed away. CNN reported his death, noting that Meredith had been suffering from melanoma and Alzheimer's disease. He was 89. Number 7. Eddie Albert. The man who would attain celebrity under the name Eddie Albert was born Edward Albert Heimberger in Illinois in 1906. He was successful both on television and on the big screen, though for a while it seemed that his career would end prematurely. At one time, and incidentally similarly to Burgess Meredith, Albert's name was associated with Hollywood's so-called blacklist. This was primarily because of his wife Margot's suspected left-leaning political sympathies and her alleged acquaintances with members of the Communist Party. However, Albert's stellar record during World War II helped salvage his career. He was regarded as a hero because, as a naval steersman, he rescued 47 Marines that were pinned down with gunfire. Albert subsequently appeared in William Wyler's 1953 comedy Roman Holiday, for which he received a nomination for the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. For 6 seasons between 1965 and 1971, he starred with Ava Gabor in the once-popular sitcom Green Acres. Albert played the character Oliver Wendell Douglas, a lawyer who gave up his practice to become a farmer. He was once again nominated for Best Supporting Actor for the 1972 comedy The Heartbreak Kid, which is now ranked number 91 in the American Film Institute's list of 100 all-time funniest movies. During the 1980s, he was also featured on the primetime CBS series Falcon Crest, a soap opera revolving around a prestigious vintner played by Jane Wyman. When he died at his home near California's Pacific Palisades, it came out that Eddie Albert had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease around 1995. Though, according to his son, he had continued to be active right up to his death. The official cause of death was said to be pneumonia. Albert was 99 years old. Number 6. Charles Bronson. Born Charles Dennis Buczynski in Pennsylvania in 1921, he forged himself into Charles Bronson, a personality that in many ways exuded gritty toughness on screen and off. The name change, by the way, was suggested by his talent agent. The supplied reason will sound familiar by now. Buczynski was thought to be a little too Eastern European sounding for a nation currently conducting House Un-American Activities Committee proceedings trying to ferret out communist infiltrators. Bronson appears to have come through the period unscathed. Among his most successful action credits are the titular role in so-called B-movie king Roger Corman's 1958 Machine Gun Kelly, John Sturgis's 1960s production The Magnificent Seven, and the same director's 1963 film The Great Escape, both of which also starred Steve McQueen. Bronson also appeared in Robert Aldrich's 1967 war picture The Dirty Dozen, as well as Sergio Leone's 1968 spaghetti western Once Upon a Time in the West. But Bronson's most recognizable character was probably Paul Kersey, a once mild-mannered professional who turned to vigilantism when his wife was slain after a home burglary. The original franchise, known as the Death Wish series, consisted of some 5 installments over 20 years. Incidentally, it was remade in 2018 by Eli Roth, with Bronson's role played by Bruce Willis, whom we mentioned in our introduction. This has added poignancy given that both actors have been associated with dementia. In Bronson's case, news outlets revealed in 2001 that he was battling Alzheimer's disease. Charles Bronson died August 30th, 2003, at the age of 81. Although I may devote a dedicated video to the topic, I'd like to acknowledge here that numerous individuals have suffered from other forms of dementia besides Alzheimer's disease. Of course, we have already registered this point in reference to Bruce Willis, who is said to suffer from fronto-temporal dementia. But there are a number of others who could also be mentioned here as well. I'll simply list 3. The first is actor George Sanders. A highlight of his career was winning the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor in 1951 for his performance in Joseph L. Mankiewicz's 1950 drama All About Eve. Sanders' apparent suicide in 1972 was, perhaps, at least partially attributable to his dementia, which was, as far as I can tell, of an unspecified sort. Or again, we have actress Estelle Gettelman. Born Estelle Scher, she is better known by her stage name Estelle Getty. She had sporadic, odd roles early in her life, but her main claim to fame came as the character Sophia Petrillo on NBC's hit comedy series The Golden Girls, which ran from 1985 to 1992. Getty died in 2008 from complications arising from Lewy-Body dementia. Finally, I'll quickly mention comedy icon Robin Williams. Known for his wacky and improvisational style, his film and television credits are too numerous to relate exhaustively. But standouts include Aladdin in 1992, Good Morning Vietnam in 1987, and Mrs. Doubtfire in 1993. But Williams also starred in many noteworthy dramas, albeit frequently with a touch of Williams' characteristic humor. These included Dead Poets Society in 1989, The Fisher King in 1991, Good Will Hunting in 1997, and in 1998, What Dreams May Come. But a darker side emerged in such movies as The Secret Agent from 1997, based on Joseph Conrad's 1907 novel, and Christopher Nolan's Insomnia in the year 2002. Like Estelle Getty, Robin Williams may have had Lewy-Body dementia, although this fact was not disclosed until autopsy results were made public after Williams' death. And of course, tragically, like George Sanders, Robin Williams was said to have taken his own life. Number 5. Peter Falk. Peter Michael Falk was born September 16, 1927 in New York City. His identifying squint was caused by the artificial eye he was forced to use after his natural eye had to be removed because of cancer when he was 3 years old. Falk got his start in theater but transitioned into the world of motion pictures. Among his credits are a disturbingly gritty portrayal of a mob-connected killer in the 1960 gangster film Murder, Incorporated, and Frank Capra's 1961 comedy A Pocket Full of Miracles. Much later, Falk appeared as both grandpa and narrator in Rob Reiner's lighthearted 1987 The Princess Bride. Still, there is little question but that Falk was most famous for his television work as the perceptive but self-effacing detective Columbo, which role he reprised over several broadcast seasons. Following 2 successful pilots in 1968, the show ran from 1971 to 1978 and then continued from 1989 to the early 2000s. Falk is still instantly visually recognizable as Lieutenant Columbo, and he played the part with a humorous edge, as illustrated by his trademark line, "Just one more thing," always delivered before the final mystery reveal. In December of 2008, news outlets reported that the actor had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. At a conservatorship hearing the following year, a physician testified that Falk had slipped rapidly into dementia since a series of dental operations in late 2007. At least according to a summary from the Huffington Post. The article then went on to raise obliquely the possibility, underdetermined by the evidence at hand, that the Alzheimer's had been brought on or worsened by the anesthesia. In any case, Peter Falk died at the age of 83 on June the 23rd, 2011. A gossip page asserted that Peter Falk's official cause of death was cardiorespiratory arrest, while pneumonia and Alzheimer's disease were both underlying causes. Number 4. Gene Wilder. Born Jerome Silberman in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on June the 11th, 1933, the boy who would eventually become known as Gene Wilder had humble beginnings. His father and maternal grandparents were both Russian Jewish immigrants. Beginning his movie career in 1967 with Bonnie and Clyde, which featured Faye Dunaway and Warren Beatty in the titular roles, he moved on to a long-time and lucrative partnership with comedy director Mel Brooks. Wilder performed in numerous films, including in 1967 The Producers, as well as Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein, both in 1974. He married Saturday Night Live actress Gilda Radner. When she died at the age of 42 from ovarian cancer, Wilder promoted cancer awareness. But his most memorable role, not least through its generation of at least one persistent meme, might be as quirky chocolatier in the 1971 movie Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Gene Wilder died at the age of 83 in his home in Connecticut on August 29, 2016. The cause, not publicly disclosed until after his death, was Alzheimer's disease. Posthumous statements from relatives stated that he had been diagnosed in 2013, but that the star chose to keep the news from fans so as not to distress anyone. Poignantly, in one press report, Wilder's nephew was quoted as saying that his uncle simply couldn't bear the idea of one less smile in the world. Number 3. Charlton Heston. Charlton Heston was the well-known stage name of the man born John Charles Carter. As a movie star, he was especially recognizable for his portrayal of major religious figures in several prominent productions during the 1950s. For example, Heston was cast as the biblical Moses in iconic director Cecil B. DeMille's final and most successful film, The Ten Commandments, released in 1956. The part earned Heston a Golden Globe nomination. 4 years later, Heston won the Academy Award for Best Actor for his performance in William Wyler's 1959 Christian-themed epic, Ben-Hur. He is also remembered for several striking works of dystopian fiction, including the influential 1968 sci-fi movie Planet of the Apes, as well as the 1973 horror cult classic Soylent Green. Perhaps his most controversial roles, however, were in the political sphere. Initially, his activism was in the service of left-leaning causes advanced by the Democratic Party. For instance, Heston spoke in favor of the civil rights movement during the 1960s. But during the 1980s, he changed his allegiances and became a Republican. In this capacity, Heston served as a spokesman for and president of the gun rights advocacy group known as the National Rifle Association, for whom he popularized the slogan, "I'll give you my gun when you pry it from my cold, dead hands." On August 29, 2002, it was widely reported that Heston had been diagnosed with a neurological disorder whose symptoms are consistent with Alzheimer's disease. Heston vowed that he was neither giving up nor giving in. Roughly a year later, in what would prove to be his final public appearance, he was given the Medal of Freedom in 2003 by then U.S. President George W. Bush. Despite this, his decline was rapid. By 2005, Heston was apparently bedridden much of the time. Ultimately, he passed away April 5, 2008, at the age of 84. The immediate cause was subsequently given as complications due to pneumonia. Number 2. Rita Hayworth. Rita Hayworth was born Margarita Carmen Canzio on October 17, 1918 in Brooklyn, New York. In the 1940s, along with Betty Grable, Veronica Lake, Carol Landis, Marie McDonald, Jane Russell, and others, Hayworth became a popular pin-up girl for many U.S. soldiers. Given this, it's not a surprise that she was cast alongside Gene Kelly in the popular wartime musical CoverGirl. Though Hayworth got her start on the silver screen appearing in B-movies, such as the 1937 mystery The Shadow. Her first major dramatic role, and possibly her most enduring, was the lead femme fatale character in the 1946 movie Gilda. Other of her numerous film credits include Only Angels Have Wings from 1939, The Lady from Shanghai, 1947, and Pal Joey in 1957. The American Film Institute ranks her 19th in their list of the top 50 actresses of all time. Among her many love interests and husbands were the famed director Orson Welles and the Ismaili prince Ali Khan. Tragically, Rita Hayworth was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease in 1980. This is now relayed as a case of so-called early-onset Alzheimer's. This comports with the comments of Hayworth's daughter, Yasmin Aga Khan, who once asserted that her mother had had dementia-like symptoms for 2 decades prior, which, doing simple math, would have been around 1960, when the actress was in her 40s. Some researchers now suspect that some forms of Alzheimer's may be precipitated by various chronic nutritional and vitamin deficiencies. For Hayworth, these may have been bound up with or at least exacerbated by habitual alcohol abuse. She lived with the illness for about 7 years after diagnosis, succumbing on May 14, 1987 at her home in New York. Reportedly, she had been in a semi-comatose state since February. Hayworth's renown called wide attention to the disease that had been largely ignored or unknown before her diagnosis and death. Many other actors, however, have suffered or died from Alzheimer's disease. These include Raymond Bailey, remembered as Mr. Drysdale from the popular Beverly Hillbillies TV series, 1930s actor Thomas Beck, David Birney, remembered for the 1970s sitcom Bridget Loves Bernie, and his relationship with actress Meredith Baxter Birney. James Doohan, best known as Scotty from the Star Trek franchise, English actress Jill Gascoigne, known for the police-themed television show The Gentle Touch, British actor Tony Haygarth, actor Leonard Jackson, lesser-known actor John Kellogg, Jack Lord, best known for his part in the long-running television series Hawaii Five-0, William Marshall, star of the first horror movie, Blackula, to feature an African-American actor, Simon Scott, known for his role in the television series Trapper John M.D., and film and TV actress Stella Stevens. Number 1. Ronald Reagan. Ronald Wilson Reagan was born in Illinois on February 6, 1911. With 53 films to his credit, he had modest success on the silver screen. He was featured in such movies as the 1940 Western Santa Fe Trail, along with Errol Flynn, and Sam Wood's 1942 King's Row, both of which are acknowledged for his respectable acting. Ronnie's most memorable performance, which earned him the alternate nickname The Gipper, was portraying ill-fated college footballer George Gipp in the 1940 biographical film Newt Rockne, All-American. For the most part, however, Reagan is remembered as a B-movie actor who occasionally veered over into goofball territory, such as with the 1950 comedy Bedtime for Bonzo, where he plays a psychology professor trying to raise and teach a chimpanzee. Fairly obviously, more than for anything he did well in Hollywood, he is now far more important for his political involvement, which culminated in 1980 with his election as the 40th President of the United States. That said, it is noteworthy that Reagan transitioned into this phase of his life via two main channels. One was his activity with the Screen Actors Guild, for which he twice served as president. In fact, when he testified before Congress's House Un-American Activities Committee, Reagan denounced certain members of the Guild as communists. According to Time magazine, reporting in 1985, Reagan also functioned as a secret FBI informant. As the Chicago Tribune stated, he and his first wife, actress Jane Wyman, gave the FBI the names of actors who they believed were members of a clique with a pro-communist line. Of course, we previously encountered several actors, including Eddie Albert, who were on the receiving end of such accusations. Mention of Wyman is therefore especially interesting, since you'll recall that Albert and Wyman worked together on Falcon Crest. Reagan's political ambitions were also evident, and probably advanced, in his capacity as spokesman for the multinational behemoth General Electric. Through his shrewd networking, he became 33rd Governor of California in 1966, a position he occupied between the powerful family duo of Pat and Jerry Brown. Reagan moved into the White House a few years after his gubernatorial term ended. During his presidency, Reagan, whether justifiably or not, was credited with reversing the inflation and unemployment, or stagflation, that took hold during the 1970s. His laissez-faire policies, characterized by reduction of taxes, were collectively called Reaganomics. His ideas, or at least those attributed to him, were also termed trickle-down theory. The idea was that stimulating large corporations would boost the economy for everyone. Reagan also increased defense spending and signed an historic treaty with then-Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev. The agreement provided that the two large superpowers, the United States of America and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, or the USSR, would begin to scale back their collections of nuclear weapons. Reagan's tenure as president has been cited as priming the USSR's collapse, which unfolded roughly between 1989 and 1992. In 1994, Ronald Reagan released a dramatic statement beginning with the words, My fellow Americans, I have recently been told that I am one of the millions of Americans who will be afflicted with Alzheimer's disease. Over the next decade, the former great communicator's cognitive and physical abilities faded, until on June the 5th, 2004, he succumbed to pneumonia, a common Alzheimer's-related complication, in his Bel Air home in California. As a coda, we note that Ronald Reagan had done much during his time as U.S. President to raise public awareness of Alzheimer's disease. For example, in 1982, he issued Proclamation 4996, creating a National Alzheimer's Disease Week. Then, in 1985, Reagan expanded on this with Proclamation 5405, making November National Alzheimer's Disease Month, a commemoration that has continued to the present day. I have an old video covering this topic a bit more fully. Statistical reports suggest that at present there are over 6 million Alzheimer's sufferers in the United States alone. According to Alzheimer's Association projections, that figure is expected to double by the year 2050. Of course, if the number of Alzheimer's patients increases in the general population, we would expect the same to occur in subgroups. In other words, the number of actors with Alzheimer's will be going up as well, and we're already seeing indications of this. Prominent here is the Australian-born actor Christopher "Chris" Hemsworth, best known for portraying the Norse demigod Thor in numerous Marvel Cinematic Universe superhero movies. Recently, the press reported that Hemsworth underwent genetic testing as part of a docudrama on various aspects of the aging process. Ultimately, Hemsworth revealed that he possesses 2 copies of the so-called Alzheimer's gene, one from each side of his family. Known as the APOE4 gene, it is present in around 1 in 4 people, but only 2 to 3% of the population have 2 copies like Hemsworth. For some context on this, see the presentation that I did concerning my own test results. And once again, stay tuned for additional material, both practical and theoretical, that is more central to the channel's overall theme, which is Alzheimer's proofing both your home and your lifestyle. But if you found something of interest in this video, I ask that you like it. And if you haven't already, consider clicking subscribe. Don't forget to turn on your notifications to be alerted to new content as it becomes available. But either way, thank you for watching.